Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Tessy. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much.
You
How are
look
you?
great. I'm okay. I'm almost awake. So
Very good, very good.
I'm okay.
Well, the same for me. I went to the gym this morning, but I feel that I'm very tired. So yeah, I think it's time for the weekend very soon.
Yeah, it's a lot of mental exhaustion from the COVID and rolling the stone up the hill and raising kids. I mean, there's a lot of things. It takes a toll. And sometimes, it's easier than other days.
It's true. One day at a time. That is so
Mm,
correct. Some days are better than others, that's for sure. And
mm.
also, I think now, before we getting into our topic, I think it's a really turbulent time also for people because to find jobs and keep
Yeah,
their jobs. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I think,
It's it Yeah, that I agree with you, and also because all of the focus is going to the sectors that don't create jobs, which is everything about tech. When the two largest employers in the world, which is one small scale agriculture, which has 1.1 billion people, and the other one is hospitality, about 330 million. So it's 1.4 billion work in those two sectors. So if you're really concerned about jobs, you should be focusing all of your attention in those two because they dwarf any of the amount of jobs working in the tech sector. Tech is more kind of eliminating jobs rather than creating them, particularly with robotization. So I hope that there's much more attention being given to vocational training and hospitality and small scale agricultural support for farmers that they earn more money. Because if you're concerned about jobs, because that's where the jobs are.
absolutely, no, I agree with you because, yeah, now we have kind of like a wave two, which is happening. We have it in
Mm.
Luxembourg, Switzerland,
Ah,
and all over the place. So I think, as the economy is already really struggling, I think this will be getting really, really harder now.
but
Getting
it could also be a breakthrough, not a breakdown. So something really beautiful could come out on the other side. I hope so. I think so.
So, on that note, for the wonderful listeners who do not know Robert yet, Robert Rubinstein is a dear friend of mine, year-long friend, and my mentor. As I said in other podcasts and Zoom o'clocks before, it is really important to find your personal mentor, someone who lifts you up, someone who is as blunt as it gets from the lung to the tongue and tells you when you do something wrong, and someone who tells you when you do something right and helps you to fine-tune what you're doing. And Robert is that person to me, and I'm very grateful for that. Robert is as well the founder of Tbli, which is over 2 decade long organization now, which works in the space of sustainability, impact investing, everything really with impact and development. And has obviously become a very, very hot topic over the last few years with climate change and companies shifting more towards impact investing and sustainability and the SDGs.
Mhm.
So your company has the most amazing events. I have attended and spoken at your events, but also now with Corona, you have shifted and innovated into also creating a online platform where people, like-minded people in the sustainability development, impact investing space, can meet and talk business and talk
Mhm.
change. So thank you so much, Robert, for taking the time to be here with me today. My first question to you: what is TBLI for people who do not know it yet, and why is it important? What makes you different?
Okay, so my wife likes to say we make dreams come true, but we're not in cosmetics. Our work is really mainly to make the financial system work for all by changing the mindset of the investment community, which are mainly alpha males and alpha females. These are investment allocators, these are asset managers, these are family offices, these are pension funds. So basically, our goal is to educate the financial community about the self-interest, the opportunity, the money flows of sustainable investment. And when they see that this is in their interest, they will do that. And if they're not doing it, they're not convinced because, why would you not want to invest in things that gives you a financial return, a social return, environmental return and a governance return, as well as reducing your risk. So that's an educational issue. It's always been an educational issue. We've been doing this 25 years in trying to change the financial system. And I've never said anything differently in the 25 years. Maybe I communicate a bit better, but fundamentally, the reason we focus on the financial sector to make an economy based on well-being is because it's a very, very, very predictable group. They never surprise. They all run up the hill and off the cliff at the same time. So the behavioral change is not the challenge. The challenge is access. People with a lot of zeros, millions and billions, are isolated. The more zeros, the more isolation. Jeff Bezos doesn't have a sign on his side of his house. Hi, Tessy, I have billions, come visit me, or hi, Robert. So it's the access is the challenge. That's always been the challenge for us. It's never been the convincing, because that's always very easy. And because of the predicted. And remember, when we started 25 years ago, our audience were the Donald Trumps. That's the group that we were trying to change. The attitude of those individuals were very much in line with Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell, or very conservative people who felt, just focus on the financials, forget any other externalities. So now, as much on why. My concern is, however, I feel that the way that it's going now, if you believe the 35 or 40 trillion dollars going into ESG and impact, I just believe that if we look at if that money is true, then why do we have so many massive problems? Why do we have so much problems on climate change destruction, biodiversity loss, water shortages, food shortages, health crisis and diabetes, income inequality, pollution, and threat of war? Because if $40 trillion is going to space, how can you have all these problems? So it's either not going into space, or the definition is wrong, the way that people consider this is an ESG or impact, or we have to double down. We have to double the efforts, and more in line with the UN SDGs. Or perhaps maybe ESG and impact is just going slower in the wrong direction. You're progress, but you're still going in the wrong direction, and that we need a more of a radical approach of not looking only at liquid assets, stocks and bonds, because I don't really believe we'll create an economy based on well-being, shifting our investments from ExxonMobil to Cisco, or to Alphabet, or to, whatever, to Amazon. I think there's many, many other ways in the illiquid space, in real estate, public transport, infrastructure, forest, micro, blue carbon, private equity, that are illiquid spaces that can have a greater influence on making the economy or the financial sector work for all. So our role is not to organize conferences. The role is change the financial system to make it work for all by educating those investment allocators. And fortunately, as I say, I keep repeating, there is no group as predictable as the financial sector. And initially, we only focused on, I say jokingly, criminals and irresponsible investors, because that's most of the audience. That now more and more people are interested, but are they just adapting Coke Light? I guess you don't drink Coke, but if you're drinking a soft drink, you're taking it watered down version, or you're drinking the classic version.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's true what my sons do. They don't.
Yeah, of course. They don't want Coke. What are you giving me Coke Zero? This is terrible.
Well, actually, I have spoken to one of the family members of the CocaCola family.
Really?
That person said to me, if you need to drink Coca-Cola, do not drink the no sugar one, because we obviously need to compensate.
Sure.
The sugar one, well, someone related to the family, not specifically in the business, but said if you need to drink Coca-Cola, drink the real one, just because, and that goes with all of these other fake sugars, right?
Sure.
As soon as you eat, especially in the American economy, there's so many fake sugar products, which is
Ugh.
actually worse for your body than just having the real thing, but having less. Because I
Yeah,
think,
I was one of our clients, hopefully clients, has the solution for massive CO2 reduction by eliminating 85% of all the CO2 emissions for the global beverage industry. So no more bringing bottles and cans and things recycle there. No more schlepping on distributing all these big, incredible solution. I won't get into it because I'll speak to you another time about it. But they told me that in the U.S. they use fructose sugar to sweeten the drinks, where in Europe they use beet sugar. That's what at least CocaCola was saying as a sweetener, and because fructose sugar is heavily subsidized because it's corn, and that is heavily subsidized by the policy making in Washington. So you're right. It's probably better either to drink Coke or just to drink water. But forget about trying to convince your kids don't drink Coke.
yeah, I know it's one of these forbidden fruits, isn't it? But also, just the last thing on that topic, I just listened to a podcast where they talked about the sugar lobbying groups,
Oh
and
yeah,
there was even a Cambridge PhD professor who was paid by the sugar lobbying groups to write papers that sugar is actually not dangerous.
yeah.
The 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and this is all coming out now, and it really shows, whatever
Um,
pays, that is what comes out, right? And governments do sadly
exactly.
still invest in these things.
My parents were, I mean, they didn't speak English to each other. They spoke French to each other. So we were raised more European growing up in New York. I was born in Brooklyn. But we never had soft drinks there. We just didn't have that life. And it was strange growing up in a country which basically has two types of restaurants. A normal restaurant that you might have in Switzerland, and then calorie delivery systems, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Pizza Hut, McDonald's, Burger Queen, Burger King, all of these things, because their model is the maximization of profit through the industrialization of food. And that's why food doesn't taste. So they produce a lot, but it has no taste and it has no nutrition. That's why you have so many of these fast food places popping up all over the world out of the US, because they're good at this calorie delivery systems. Anyway, let's kind of get back to the
Yeah, let's
ESG
get back to the
world.
topic, but it is still relevant in the way that talking about governments then and how they subsidize different industries. What do you think about, let's say big corporates in the US? Are they
Mhm.
really as sustainable? Are they really driven by changing the way that company
No.
runs?
No, not at all. I mean, you always have to look at in January. January is the key press release factory production, because Davos is coming up. So around Davos, the press releases are flying out the doors. So you have these silly press releases, Microsoft saying, we're going to suck out all the carbon out of the world based on all the carbon produced since we've been in business by 2050. I don't know if you know where you're going to be in 2050, whether I'm going to be alive. Who is going to call Microsoft in 2050 if they still exist? Hey, didn't you say you're going to suck out all the carbon? You're going to be carbon negative by 2050? It's a meaningless statement because it puts it out there, but no one can verify it because we've got to wait until 2050. But it sounds really great. And you have this monumental press release machine of we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that. And I'm from Brooklyn. I'm a very simple guy. I just, ask people, please pull up the kimono. Let's see what's underneath there. Where's the money flows going? And when I look at all of these aspirational statements, the business roundtable in America, we should have purpose-driven businesses, but every single ESG fund manager, every single one worldwide, does not look at two things, which are the most influential of business. They don't look at how much lobby money the corporates spend to influence behavior, and they don't look at their taxes. So you can say all you want, but if you're not paying any taxes like Amazon, and if you're not paying, and you're pouring lots of money into lobbying to prevent universal health care, I don't care what your report says. That's a fundamental destruction of society because you are not paying your fair share. So those two things are not even on the agenda of the ESG community. I don't really believe the corporates until they really do something. There was a German company called what's called Covestra, and they were seen as the bad bank. They were part of, I think, Bayer or BASF. And Covestra was spun out and said, oh, get rid of this junk. But what was Covestra's model? Covestra said, our feedstock now is going to be CO2. We're going to create chemistry that will take the CO2 and then convert it to useful products. And they were the ones that built the solar plane that traveled around the world. Their plastics were. So there are companies that are serious, but unfortunately, what you see is the ones doing the most are talking the least. And the ones doing the least are talking the most. So people believe the press releases and no one really confronts them. Just look at the Montreal Pledge. I don't know if you're familiar with the Montreal Pledge. It's an agreement by all of the asset managers to disclose the carbon risk of their investment. So this is a big deal. This is not an aspirational statement like PRI or CDP, Carbon Disclosure Pro, or any of the others. This is, open the kimono, let's see what you got. So just go to the website, montrealpledge.org, and look at who signed the declaration. A lot of European pension funds, banks, asset managers, some Asian. Two or three pension funds in the US. No major asset manager in the US signed, not even Al Gore and David Blood with Generation, who talk about climate, carbon, etc. So why don't you publish? Well, maybe you have a carbon intensive portfolio, but you're ESG. So that's why I say ESG is maybe going slower in the wrong direction, because you could be ESG, but it doesn't mean that you're not destructive. So I don't care what the press releases are put out and the communications are put out. They're very well done. They've got very great professionals. But it's about what you do, not what you say. And the methodology now for ESG on the reporting is the companies that are often the most toxic. BP, Shell score very high in the sustainability indexes. PepsiCo, it's a major source of diabetes in the US because of processed food and sugar sodas. Unilever, they make processed food and semi-toxic cosmetics, but they have great reporting. And for me, it's about what the company does, but that's not the methodology for ESG, which is why I keep saying it's going slower in the wrong direction, because we're not looking at what companies do. We're just looking at what they report. Yeah. But it's better than 25 years ago, where the methodology then was the O.J. Simpson method, which was basically, if we don't have a video of you murdering your wife, you're innocent. So it was, self-assessment and control by ignorance. Now, there's very little discussion about why ESG or impact. It's more about how, what's out there that can reach scale. There's much more money flows. I just don't think the way it's going about now is really beneficial to addressing climate, poverty, water, food, etc.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. Also, when I worked at Vice Media, for example, in the Department of Impact, something that was very clear to me when I was assessing some companies' reports is that, yes, the reports are very far from what the reality looks like. And I always said to these companies, I said, wow, your report is like a Bible on my pillow. It's amazing. I said, but your budget towards these things that you're advocating, that you're doing, just doesn't add up. And so, no, I totally agree. It's time to do more rather than just pretend that you are doing more.
Yeah, and I remember there was a foundation in the Netherlands. They had 500 million euro in assets. It was a savings bank, and they shut it down, and they put it in endowment, and they were doing philanthropy. And the CEO said to me, I'm going to start doing ESG, and I'm not going to do it well. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to start. So I asked his wealth manager, hey, let's start with index tracking. Very simple. We just follow the index. And then wealth manager, oh, no, we can't do that. You can lose money. Your performance will be bad. So the CEO said, okay, I'll go look for another wealth manager who can do that. So of course that wealth manager said, no, we can do that. And each year he tried to do better and better and more. And he said to me after, I think it was 5 years, he said, Robert, it's really not that hard to do if you really want to do it. But it's extremely hard to do if you don't want to do it. And that's really the issue. If you don't want to do it, that's okay. I don't care. It's your choice, it's your money. If you do want to do it, fine. But, let's stop this partial pregnancy, which so many of these people have. We'll be partly pregnant in a kind of in or out, or do it or do not. There's no try, to paraphrase Yoda.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. I'm also, I'm in Switzerland at the moment, and I was just exploring, looking into what are the jobs here out there. And, obviously a lot of banks are looking for experts in sustainability communication and all of these things. And I applied to many because, I have done that in the past and my CV does read that. But then really, then they always came back, yeah, you're too young, yeah, here. I think it's a bit, and I told them that as well, some of them. I said, I think you're just putting a job out to say that you're actually looking for people like that, but you're really not looking to hire people who actually will do things. Because then you need to invest into that and change.
And the people, I tell everyone, why is it that no major private bank, JP Morgan's, UBS, not one owns the impact space? If it's also important, why doesn't anyone be the market leader? Because basically none of them want to be seen as the impact bank, but they don't want to be not seen as the impact bank. So they're schizophrenic and they don't allocate any resources. It's only going to ICT, cybersecurity, compliance, capital buffers, and bonuses. And there were three, I remember we did a retreat at Scotland, a beautiful castle near Edinburgh, and there were three women, all very senior from the Swiss private banking space. One was senior impact investing for Credit Suisse. One was very senior impact investing for UBS and Partners Group, which is a private equity fund in Switzerland. And the other one was head of sustainability for Julius Baer. And they all quit their jobs at the same time. They didn't know each other.
They're all looking for jobs again, because all of these that you were just mentioning are
they're all looking. And they all went. And they met at the castle and they were all sharing war stories. He says, I've worked at this bank a long time. I'm just tired of the stories. They're not serious about this. I am serious. So I don't want to work for an organization that is not all in and not serious about it. I've done that too long now. Life is short. So I'm sure any private bank would jump at the chance of having you work for them, but they'll probably all ask you to be a relationship manager because of your network.
Yeah, exactly. And that sucks. Sorry for saying it. But for me, I'm just so tired of it. Always people are like, oh, your network is so great. They hire me because of my network. But then really to actually change something. And I had it so many times where I said, what are you doing here? What is this report? What was this transaction? And people are like, oh yeah, or some say, oh, don't ask questions. Or they literally tell you, that you're replaceable, right?
Yeah.
If you don't do it, someone else will do it.
But you have to always follow your heart. I used to teach MBA students.
It's crucial.
And I told them, you want to change business? Refuse to work for them when they come to recruit you because of values. Tell them your values don't align with mine. Because if you say that a few times, that will have more impact in changing the company than trying to change it from within. Because you rarely get the opportunity to change anything once you're on the inside of a big organization. The other forces take over. So my advice to everybody, follow your heart, only work for companies that align with your values and your purpose, and that company will come along. There are many companies like that. And by refusing to work for them, you can also change the behavior of those that are not there yet, because they will lose the talent that they would like to have. So good for you.
Well, thank you, Robert, for this conversation. Also for the people listening here, who work in the ESG space, impact investing space. I know there's many of you. Please do get in touch with Robert. He is really an incredible man, and his company, his conferences and everything are just really the spot to be, because it's more from the lung to the tongue than
Yeah.
putting a red lipstick on a pig. So thank you so much, Robert, for your time. One
Thank
last brief question, because we
you.
ran out so quickly of time. In turbulent times like this, what would you share to the listeners as something positive in your sector?
There are so many. I think the most important thing to remember is that there are no angels, but there are a lot of heroes, a lot. And I am constantly meeting them all the time. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful people. We have something called 10 Tbli Expert Network, which are 500 independent geniuses on sustainability, and all are very kind and generous and willing to share. And that, I think, is at least in our network, in our group, what sets it apart is that it's deep knowledge, serious commitment to sustainability, and most important, the willingness to share. But just be discerning. Don't, only believe the press releases. But there are so many wonderful people out there. And if they're not in your network or your ghetto, go to another one. Come to our network, or to come to our ghetto, or come to our, virtual happy hours or talks, or any of that, because you'll meet them. And that's, everybody's always surprised when they come. They said, wow, these people were actually authentic. I haven't met an authentic person in a long time in the financial sector. And there's lots of them like yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. You are, for a reason, my mentor. I think everything you're saying resonates with me, and I'm sure with a lot of people listening to this. So if you want to hear more, do get in touch. I will make sure I put all of Robert's websites below his YouTube video and put you in touch with him. And
Thank you.
We will be speaking offline a bit more, of course. And until then, my regards to the family. Thank you for everything you're doing.
My pleasure.
And yeah, you have my full support, as you know. And I'm sure after listening to this, there will be many other people following.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time and for doing this. Chapeau.
Thank you, Robert. Bye.
Bye.